Well, Season 3, Episode 6 of the Use Your Head podcast coming your way. I'm John McLean. Been a couple weeks. Glad to be back with you for this new episode of the podcast where we just kind of chat and use our heads about the things of the world. My name is John McLean. I'm in Dallas, Texas, where I come from, or not come from originally, but where I am now, where this show originates from, and I'm delighted to be with you. I am a seminary student. I'm a postulant for holy orders, studying to become a deacon, and kind of walking on that journey a little bit with you along with some other things. I'm happy to report that as of yesterday, another course is completed. I've finished Church and Sacraments. It's in the books. Great course. Really, really good course. Learned a lot. Really enjoyed the research, especially that I did. Really interesting, and enjoyed it immensely. Up next, the 39 Articles of Religion course will be coming up, and I'll be doing that by External Studies. It'll take me up to around Christmas time. So really enjoying my studies. A great deal. You know, it's something occurred to me. In graduate school, you always write papers. You write a lot of papers, lots of writing, and which is great because I enjoy writing. I like to write. And I love, like I just said, I love to do research because when you do research, whether you want to or not, you learn stuff. And you often learn things that you didn't learn necessarily in the lectures. You know, sometimes there's always something that the professor just can't fit in. And so as you're doing research around the topic in a course, you often encounter interesting facts that you didn't know before. And so that's one of my favorite parts about the writing process. In addition to just writing itself, it's a creative thing. Even for academic writing, there's a bit of creativity that goes into it. It's fun to craft phrases, and it's fun to take an idea that you're trying to communicate, a piece of knowledge that you're trying to demonstrate that you have a firm grasp of, or an argument that you might be making. And then, craft your phrasing and your language around that to really drive it home. It's fun. It's a challenge. So I enjoy that part of it. But something occurred to me as I was wrapping up this last paper that I did. It is so great, so convenient to write academic papers in the internet age. I mean, because when I was an undergrad many moons ago, there was no internet. And so when you had to write a paper, and sometimes in undergrad school I was a business major, so I didn't do a whole lot of writing, but had to do some, and I would have to go to the library, and you'd go to the stacks, as they called it, and you'd have to look up and find all these books. And we did have computers. We didn't have the card catalog. We could go on the computer there and look up, books and so forth. But then it just told you where to find it. Then you had to go to the stack, hope the book was there, and then grab it off the shelf. And you ended up with a pile of books on this table. And you're, either making photocopies or you're furiously taking notes or what have you to get the research. It was time consuming, and it was something you had to plan. It was hard. It was inconvenient, because I don't want to say hard because I don't want to imply that it's not hard now. The actual act of writing academic papers is very challenging, but the convenience of the internet now, it is just amazing. And I have mad respect for all those grad students who went through grad school before the internet age and had to write graduate level papers, graduate level research at the library. Wow. I mean, it's challenging enough sitting down. I mean, I have Logos Bible software, which is not cheap, but I'm telling you, it's an amazing tool that really saves you a lot of time, and it gives you access to just thousands and thousands of volumes of information, of research. It's really amazing. So anyway, if you went through grad school before the internet existed and you spent hours upon hours and days upon days at the library and lifting, 80-pound stacks of books and carrying them around to the table that you happen to be working at and hoping the book is there, all while facing a deadline and all the other things of life, I salute you. Because I'm now tasting that in the internet age, which is really, really great. So I'm very, very thankful of that. Use Your Head podcast. I have an email address if you'd like to chime in. We're going to get to a little something that I saw that prompted me to do a show today. And that's kind of how I'm doing this now. In this third season, is I'm really just focusing on things rather than being regimented and having to come up, oh boy, it's time to do a show. Let me find something interesting. I just wait for it to happen organically. And then when I feel like making a show, I do one. And I saw something today. I'm just going to say on social media. I'm not going to point out where, because I don't reply to those things because they're just looking for a fight. Anyway, the email address, I got sidetracked. See, that happens. John at useyourheadpodcast.com. John, John, at useyourheadpodcast.com. So I'm on the socials, and like I say, when I find things that make me bristle or raise an eyebrow or gasp or feel faint, whatever, and believe me, I experience all of those things on a typical social media session, which I pointed out before. I limit to 15 minutes a day. I don't ever engage on social media because those people are looking for a fight, and nothing ever gets solved by being a keyboard warrior. I mean, to me, being a tough guy on the keyboard is cowardice. If you're gonna, if you can't have a civil debate, which most people, it seems today, can't, which is sad on social media, then I'm not going to get in the mud and fight with you, because the only one that likes fighting in the mud is pigs. And so anyway, but what I did want to mention it because it's just, well, let's just get into it. I saw a write-up. It wasn't an article. It was a lengthy post that someone had written. With a photograph, and I'll describe the photograph to you. It's a photograph of what looks to me to be like a basement, like maybe in the bottom of a community center. So it's a large room with folding chairs, and people sitting around, and they don't look happy. They look kind of down, and it's mostly women, I remember. And I'm thinking, okay, well, what is this? Well, it's this gentleman is writing a post about parents meeting in secret. And these are parents of what he described as, and I had to read it twice because it's not a thing, but he described it as parents of gender expansive children. And I went, okay, gender expansive children. And in this post, with the accompanying photo that I just described, he is lamenting the fact that these parents have to meet in secret because they're afraid to meet in public, is the implication, to find support and find kind of companionship, commiseration with other parents of gender expansive children. Well, when I used my head, it was pretty easy. Look, that is not a thing. It's not a thing. If you've been pulled into this idea that there are children running around out there, and we're talking children, 6 years old, 8 years old, 12 years old, maybe younger. I don't know, probably. And their parents go, well, my child is gender expansive. Pardon me, parent, but you are a certified lunatic if you believe that. And I'm just going back to basics here. All right. And I'm gonna describe a parent who, maybe a nervous father pacing at the hospital. His wife is in labor. And finally they come in and they say, it's a gender expansive child. Is that what they say? No. What do they say? It's a boy or it's a girl. And, back in my day, you'd hand out cigars with either a blue or a pink band on them. That's really not PC anymore. But in any event, the nurse or the doctor or whoever comes out to the waiting room where all the fathers are pacing doesn't say it's a gender expansive child. It's either a boy or a girl. And how do they know that? Well, not to be too graphic, but they look. They take their eyes and they apply their eyes to their medical training. And it's a pretty easy thing. In fact, I would venture a guess in the year 2025, and I don't want to go too far outside the box here, but I would venture to guess that you don't have to have a medical degree or even medical training to be able to make that determination. Am I making sense? And yet, we have parents. These are adults, young adults, but adults. Parents of gender expansive children. What? Well, the first thing I'd like to say is if you're meeting in secret because you're ashamed, you ought to be. Because if you have been called by God to be a parent, which is one of the very highest callings you can have as a human being, and you're sitting in a basement with a bunch of other loony birds who think you have gender expansive children and you're upset and lamenting the fact that the world doesn't get your problem, boy. Here's the thing. God created them male and female. That's in Genesis. And it's pretty simple. I mean, there's two. And he made it obvious, right? I mean, it's not rocket science. And then he told the male and the female to what? Be fruitful and multiply. So that tells you got a male and a female. That's how you make a family. That's how the human race propagates, expands. That's where life is created. We get to partner with God in creating life. It's one of the most powerful things I've ever studied in creation theology is what God is allowing us to do through this nuptial union between a man and a woman. A husband and a wife get to participate with God, the creator of everything, in creating life. It's a remarkable truth. And now, in our modern smart world where we're so wise and we're so sophisticated and we've come out of the dark ages, we have parents huddled in basements whining because the world doesn't understand that they have gender expansive children. The world doesn't understand because that doesn't exist. It's not a thing. It's like a bunch of parents huddled in a basement upset because the world doesn't understand that they have pet Sasquatches at home. Now, apologies to you if you're one of those that think Sasquatch is out there. Okay, fair enough. Halloween's coming, so we may have a sighting soon. And it's not that I'm not compassionate. Look, these are young adults, meaning they haven't been out of school very long, meaning they didn't go into school very long before that, meaning they were brought up and taught all this absolute garbage, utter and complete hogwash nonsense. Because you can say to me, well, John, that's all well and good for you, but I don't believe in the Bible. I think the Bible's just fiction. It's just made up. Even then, back to the delivery room. It's pretty obvious. Okay? Now, moving on from that, if we may, if you're following me, I can hear the parent saying, well, yeah, that's fine. You know, let's say my child, my gender expansive child has male genitalia, but he doesn't feel male. He doesn't, or they don't. He wouldn't say he, you know, that's offensive now. Because, you know, they get to choose their own. Which makes it difficult for me to make a sentence. Anyway, look, if you've got a biologically male, this is so silly. If you've got a biologically male child who says, Mommy, I don't feel like I'm really a boy. And by the way, that was told to them by somebody. Nevertheless, let's say that tragic lie has been fed into this little child, which is a crime against humanity. If that child really thinks that's mental illness. That's not normal. That's not okay. We don't embrace the child and go, oh, there, you're just gender expansive. That's all. That is not love. That's nonsense. If you're going to love your children, you've got to teach them what's true and what's deception. And this goes for no matter what your faith is, even if there's no faith. Because there are people out there that are atheists. Bill Maher, you know, he's out there. He's a card-carrying atheist, but he's kind of a guy that typically will use his head about a lot of things. Now, he gets off on some things, but, you know, this entire gender expansive, it's not a thing. It's made up, and it's designed to confuse people. To confuse children who are defenseless and don't know any better. And their parents are acting as useful idiots, coddling them into this nonsense that is destroying not just their self-esteem, we're way beyond that. It's destroying their mental health. It's destroying their ability to function in the world as human beings. It's destroying their ability to understand what's life and what isn't. It's destroying their ability to recognize truth and blur the lines of that with fantasy. Fantasy like gender-expansive children. Now, in a world where we have one of our most renowned educational universities, Harvard, who I read today is having a course at Harvard University. Okay, Harvard, the big H. They have a course being taught, and the subject of the course is RuPaul's Drag Race. You can take a college class on RuPaul's Drag Race, being taught by a drag queen, of course, at Harvard. So that's the world we're living in. So, parents, look, I don't know what you were taught. I don't know what your faith is. I don't know if you have faith. I hope you do. I encourage you to. The world makes a whole lot more sense when you do. But if your beliefs, if your values, if your, to use a tired and often misused word, worldview, shifts with the prevailing winds of pop culture, and it's frightening how many young parents I see that are right in that boat, sinking to the bottom of the deep. I have compassion because you got there because you were not taught some things and you were taught some other things. And you have a skewed view of what's real and what isn't. And look, I don't want to sound like I'm apologizing. I'm not. I don't apologize. I never apologize for telling the truth, ever. And if you're offended by that, that's your problem. Truth is truth. Fantasy is fantasy. And gender-expansive children is fantasy. And, there are people out there running around saying, well, it's really child abuse. And you know what? I think that's absolutely correct. If you're teaching your child something that is wrong, it's no different than teaching your child to play in traffic. Would you teach your gender-expansive child to go out and play on a busy street in the middle of rush hour? Probably not. So if you can get there, which is something that can destroy their physical health, they get hit by a bus, it's perfectly okay, it seems, to destroy their mental health and their souls with it. Because when they get pulled down into this deception, the father of lies is going to take them over. And that's happened. These gender-expansive children that are having arms, purportedly loving arms, wrapped around them and being called and going, oh, it's okay. The world's not going to understand you, but I do. You can be whatever you want. You wind up, they become adults. And they have no concept of the value of life. They have no concept of truth versus fantasy. I mean, if they can be taught that their gender is fluid, expansive? What does that even mean? It's nonsense. It's utter nonsense. So if you are a parent of a gender expansive child, get some help. Don't huddle in a basement. Because here's the other thing about basements. If you turn the lights off in a basement, it's really dark down there. No light gets around. And falsehood loves the dark. Deception is afraid of the light because when deception, when falsehood, when wicked fantasy is pushed into the daylight, it shrieks in fear. It can't stand. It dies because the light reveals the truth. That's a scriptural truth. And so I find it very ironic that these parents, and I don't know, this photo may have just been made up. It may have been AI for all I know. It may have just been a visual aid for this person's, wanting us to all have compassion on the parents of gender expansive children. I got compassion, all right, but it's not about the children. I mean, it is, but it starts with the parents. If you're a parent that actually believes that nonsense, you have a problem. And you can't be a parent to a child with problems if you've got problems yourself. It's a mess. Get some help. I would recommend starting with the scriptures. There are copies of the Bible everywhere. Read the first 3 chapters of the book of Genesis. It's the first page. Open it up. In the beginning. And then the chapters, if you're not familiar with the Bible, there's usually a big number. 1, 2. Ignore the little numbers. Just read the big numbers. The first 3 chapters. It'll take you 20 minutes if you read slow. And that wipes away all of this gender expansive sexual confusion nonsense that is destroying a generation. More than one generation now. But if you engage someone on the internet who's reporting this, you're just starting a fight, which is what they want. They want attention. Gender expansive children want attention. So anyway, using my head with look, I pray for these people. I know I sound angry. I am. Because when children, and look, children are defenseless. They don't know any better, right? They're just like a puppy. They're you get mad at a puppy for chewing up your shoe, but he doesn't know any better until he's taught and that knowledge is firm. He doesn't know any better. And humans aren't puppies. They can reason. So you have to teach a child, but if a child's been taught wrong or hasn't been taught at all, and is learning from books like Billy Has Two Dads and all this kind of nonsense that they're stuffing our libraries with in schools. Look, I get angry when children are injured and harmed because they're defenseless. And someone that would harm a child like that is the biggest coward I can imagine. And so, yeah, I'm saying this to you, you indoctrinators. You're a coward to pick on kids. But why do they do that? Because kids are easy to deceive. Because they're sponges and they believe stuff, and it's disgusting. But I pray for these parents, because in a lot of cases, these young parents, these 20-something parents who are huddled in these basements going, oh, my child is gender expansive. They're not sad about that, by the way. They're sad about the fact that nobody upstairs gets it. Of course they don't, because it's not real. It's fake. It's nonsense. We need to pray. We need to pray for these people because, look, I feel bad for the parents, but I feel really bad for the kids because, if you're 22, 23 years old, regardless of your educational background, even if you went to the worst of the schools, you still should know better. You've been around the block a few times. You should know what's real and what's not. On the other hand, brainwashing is a thing. And I think that's what's happening in a lot of cases. Gender expansiveness is a disease, but it's not a thing. We need to flush it out of our culture, flush it out of the minds of our young people. I'll be praying. I hope you will too. And we're going to quit for now. I'll see you next time on the Use Your Head podcast. Bye-bye for now.